I am Department Head Lisa Master Alexis of the Mark H. McCormack Sport Management Department. And I welcome you to this very unique and special evening entitled Covering the Bases, an evening with our general managers, Chris Antonetti of the Cleveland Indians, Ben Cherington of the Boston Red Sox, and Neal Huntington of the Pittsburgh Pirates. It gives me great pleasure to have our Dean, Mark Fuller, kick off the evening. And so if I can have Mark come up and give us his perspective on the evening. Thank you, Mark.
Good evening. In the next 60 seconds, I'm going to give you my view of the universe. And it's important for this evening's presentation. So the universe is this. There are 1,300, make that 13,000 business schools in the world. There are 650 AACSB accredited business schools. There are 100 of those that also have accounting accreditation. So now the universe has shrunk to 100. Of those 100 schools, there are 30 that have had programs like accounting, operations and information management, marketing, rated in the top 30 in the world over the last 3 years. In that set, there are 6 programs that have a top-ranked hospitality and tourism management program. And you probably know where this is going. In all the universe of all the business schools that are out there, only one of them, only the Isenberg School of Management, has the #1 sport management program in the world. The panel that you'll see tonight, the Industry Education Partnership that you're going to see tonight, is not only a hallmark of the school and where we've been taking things over the last 4 years, but is the heart of the sport management program. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you here tonight. Enjoy yourself. Lisa, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate your leadership and support of being in the business school. What a night. We are so proud. This is a celebration that is so unique to our 40 years. This is 40 years in the making. For those of you who are not associated with the program, this is our 40th anniversary year, and what a way to celebrate this, but by having these general managers back. I want to tell you a little bit about our department. One of our goals and our mission is to cultivate leaders. And the way that we do that is through something called experiential learning. And this event embodies that. It showcases what our students have to do to learn, bridging the gap from the academic environment and putting that into practice. This is a completely student-driven event tonight. So my hat is tipped to them for all that they've done to put this together. We have 750 ticketed members of the community, the university, the students in our classes, as well as friends of the department here. We have members of the media, 3 general managers, an NFL team media personality, all in one room. And that's without a great deal of hard work. We couldn't have pulled this off, and really it's on the backs of the students. This event was conceived by one of our students, a sport management major, Scott Savrin. And Scott, you were supposed to be in my sight line. Where is Scott? Scott, if you could stand up. From the initial meeting in my office last April until tonight, Scott's commitment to this vision was steadfast. His ability to pull a team together just astonishes me. The plan was carried out with a lot of help. That from Wes LaValle, if Wes can stand. Jess Dunn was a key player, if Jess can stand. And Kevin Lombard. Where's Kevin? And there were a great many others who contributed. The work of these students exemplifies what we do best at this university. And that is really trusting our students and putting them in positions of leadership. We give them the freedom to take what they're learning in the classroom and apply it in the real world and in real world settings. The alumni that you're going to meet in a few minutes have had the benefit of that education, and it will continue to be the best and most rewarding part of what we do here to teach our industry leaders. This event is also a great example of our students working collaboratively and in partnership with faculty and staff. This event brought together teams of students from 4 different clubs. The clubs that worked together were the Jewish Leaders in Business, the Women in Sport Management, the University of Massachusetts Association for Student Sport Managers, and the Association for Diversity in Sport. Teamwork is a hallmark of the sport industry, and watching these students, as I have over the last few months, pull this together, coming from different vantage points, has just been amazing for me, and is really tells me that they're going to go out and do great things in this world. To pull off an event of this caliber, they needed to know operations, dealing with media, credentialing people, tickets, setting up, taking down, and everything to this moment has been completely seamless. And so they've worked together with us to really pull off a quality event. And finally, we wouldn't be here tonight without our alumni giving back. We are so grateful that alumni at such a high level in their career remember us and remember our students and remember what it was like to be a student. They came here and participated in a panel at round tables before this discussion where they talked one-on-one with students, and then they're giving us their time at this panel. We are sincerely grateful to them for that, and for those of you who know baseball, you know there is no off-season. So these gentlemen are very, very busy, so they are really giving us a great gift by coming back tonight. And finally, Mike Reiss. Our panel is moderated by a sport management alum who is also an accomplished sport journalist. Mike is a media personality with close to 60,000 Twitter followers. Mike is currently with ESPN in Boston and have previously done stints at the Boston Globe, Metro West, Patriots.com, and Patriots Weekly. And what I remember about Mike was how much time he spent in and outside the classroom with hands-on projects. So Mike is a perfect person to be here. Currently, Mike covers the Patriots on ESPN Boston and makes regular appearances on all of ESPN's platforms. So Mike, thank you for always remembering us. And Mike was even here last Thursday helping out with a career panel. So thank you, Mike, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Dean Fuller. What a great night for the Mark H. McCormack Department of Sport Management at the Isenberg School. I can't think of a better place to be than right here, right now. We have a great program set up for you, and we're going to get right to it. Help me welcome our first general manager from the Cleveland Indians, Chris Antonetti. Our next general manager from the Boston Red Sox, Ben Cherington. And our third general manager, we might pull off a three-way trade here tonight, Neal Huntington from the Pittsburgh Pirates. So the way we look at this is we have 750 of our close friends here. We're going to let you in on a great discussion. A lot of you have asked great questions that I have up here tonight, and they sort of come in three different categories. We have career-related questions. We have questions specific to the job as the general manager, and also some more broad questions on baseball from a general perspective. But we want to start with those career-based questions. And Chris, start us out and tell us how we're all connected here in terms of the ties to UMass and how you guys go way back.
Well, Ben and I were fortunate to be classmates in 1997 at the University of Massachusetts Sports Management Program, and so our history goes back to then. And even thinking back on those days for us, it was clear for me, actually, one of the things that stood out about the program and the group of people that were here were the exceptional intellect, the character, the passion, and I think Ben really set the bar for that for our class with his passion for baseball specifically. He was single-mindedly focused on that's what he wanted to do with his career, and really set the standard for our group. And so it was fun to be around him then, and certainly our friendship has grown and evolved over the years. And following that, one of the other unbelievable things about UMass is its alumni network. And as I was starting to look out and trying to decide, okay, what opportunities would be out there for me in professional sports, I was able to get in touch with Neal Huntington, who was at that time the assistant farm director with the Montreal Expos. He had a very small staff, and Neal was willing to take a chance on me, despite me not having extensive baseball experience. And so for that, I've always been grateful for Neal, or to Neal, and we've developed a very close friendship since, and two relationships up here that I cherish and I'm very thankful for.
Chris, I think you mentioned before, didn't he have you living with a player there right away?
Yeah, I left that part out. So Neal was great in providing me an opportunity, but it was an unpaid internship. I just graduated from a fairly expensive undergraduate university, and the job was unpaid, which was fine. I sold ice cream in the stands at night for 25 cents an ice cream, which it was in the Florida State League. There were about 150 people about in attendance at a Florida State League.
Night.
Yeah. So you can do the math. 150 people, even if you sold a couple of ice creams to every person, that's not exactly a lot of money. But it was a great experience. I think one of the things that I'm eternally grateful for Neal especially, is just the opportunity he provided me to grow and develop. Because that internship, especially for someone without a ton of baseball experience, provided me an opportunity to grow and develop. And Neal was great not only in giving me that initial opportunity, but providing me additional responsibilities along the way.
Ben, how about for you, your connections to Chris and Neal?
Sure. Well, Chris mentioned we were in class together, school together, and he lied about the student thing. He was a much better student. And there's plenty of faculty here to attest to that. But we had a good time, and we had a great group in that year, that program. A lot of people that we've both kept in touch. We were just talking out back about it, and I remember that it was just a feeling amongst that group and amongst the faculty that you're trying to find a better way to do things and make a difference, and left a sort of indelible impression on me. And then Neal really saved me in the end because. As Chris said, I was pretty focused on baseball, and probably too focused on baseball, but very narrowly focused on baseball operations and getting into a front office. And as Chris would attest, as Neal would tell you, it's not an easy thing to do, and it took me a while. And I was about to, I'd actually taken the LSAT and was about to, even consider another path, or at least a temporary different path. And an internship opened up in Cleveland where Neal was at the time, and I'd gotten to know Neal a little bit through both the UMass connection and the Amherst College connection, and he set me up with an interview in Cleveland, and fortunately got the job, and that was my toe in the door. And then spent a year in Cleveland with Neal and a lot of other good people there at the time, and that was sort of I consider my graduate experience, part one was UMass, part two was the Indians. I took a lot out of both places.
And Neal, how about for you, being back at UMass and your connections with Ben and Chris?
No question. I feel like the old-timer of the group is helping both of them get a foot in the door, but the reality is they did it themselves. When we had openings, we reached out to our contacts, to the people that we trusted, to the people that we respected, and to get the rave reviews that we got on Chris, to get the rave reviews we got on Ben, made the decision to offer them an opportunity to help us as an organization. By the way, there's an Expos hat out there. It's great. I love to see that. And yes, we were the smallest of small markets at that time, but to be able to rely on people that you believe in and you trust to fill opportunities and to be able to reach back to something you're familiar with. And these guys have taken it and obviously done some tremendous things individually. And I'm eternally grateful for my time here, the lessons learned in the classroom, the lessons learned outside of the classroom, the incredible intelligence pool, not only with the faculty, but classmates of mine that have gone on to do amazing things. Carol Barr here, several others in the NFL, in soccer, in the Olympics, in amateur basketball, just have done some remarkable things, and I think try to represent the university in a favorable light.
750 people here, and you pick out an Expos hat. Now I know how they have an eye for talent. It just sort of stands out. I was thinking about this, 1997 for a couple of you in terms of graduating. You were sitting out in this audience at that time, and now you're up here, and there's probably a lot of people out there that are wondering, what do we have to do to be sitting up here 15, 20 years down the road? What would you say to someone out in the audience that might have the same aspirations to land in a seat like this, Chris?
Well, I think the one thing that's exceptionally challenging for us as we work through things is that there are so many people, so many unbelievably qualified people looking to get into the game of baseball, even more than when we started out. So I think the challenge for any individual is to find some way to distinguish yourself. It can be in a variety of different ways. It can be in mathematics, it can be in finance, it can be in a project that you're doing, but find some way to distinguish yourself, because the thing we're looking for, at least in our organizations, are people that can come in and make a difference. We obsess over every person we hire, all the way down to interns, and we're looking for everyone to come in and contribute. So if there's something you can do, some unique skill that you can provide to an organization that will allow you to contribute right off the bat, that's something that will allow you to distinguish yourself from everyone else, because there are a lot of people who talk about having a passion for baseball, but it's different. There's a difference between having a passion for baseball and a passion for working in baseball, and I think those people that demonstrate that commitment and are willing to go the extra mile and find some way to carve out a niche for themselves, those are the people that separate themselves out.
Ben, do you have any thoughts to add to that?
I think Chris is right, and there's when we're looking for people, we're looking for someone who can come in and make a difference right away, and then has the capacity to learn other things about the business. And so you have to have a skill that transfers right away, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from playing for a long time, or it could, but it doesn't have to. The other thing I would say, and I mentioned to the students when we met earlier, is that first job description is not going to be the perfect one, because it's your first one, so it's not going to be your perfect one. I think being around the right people, being around good people, is more important than the first job. You're going to learn more from the people you're around initially than your specific job duties, because let's face it, when you're first hired, those aren't the duties that you sign up wanting to do 5-10 years from now. So to the best you can, make some sacrifices to get around the right people. And I know that benefited me, as I said, in the year I spent here, and certainly the year in Cleveland, and then after.
Neal?
It's the same. Resume separators, tangible work product if you can. If you've got a passion for scouting, try to get out and scout players. Try to get around scouts and learn from them. Try to gather as much knowledge, as much information as you can about the field that you want to go into, and yet realize that you have a lot more to learn. And humility and passion will take you a long way.
Talk about influences in your career. Neal, I'll stick with you. Who are some of the people that have been most influential to you in your career?
Fortunate to get into an organization in Montreal that was very small. Chris talked about our front office. It was about 2 of us in player development and about 6 overall. I think we have more interns now than we had full-time employees at that point in time. So obviously Dan Duquette gave me my initial shot to work in that Cleveland environment. I haven't even tried to stop and count up the number of GMs that go back to John Hart and Mark Shapiro in Cleveland, but it might be 8 or 9. So the opportunity to work with some incredible people, the ability to work around a Felipe Alou or an Eric Wedge as a manager, you take away. They were willing to to let a 24-year-old or a 34-year-old ask a lot of questions and be patient and let me ask more questions because I just wanted to learn, wanted to get better.
And how did you make the connection with Dan Duquette just to break through that door initially?
You know, I've always counted my blessings for those that are going to go to the winter meetings and trudge around the lobby. You're going to hate me because I did not have to do that. But trust me, I count my blessings every day because I feel like I went about my business the right way when I was an undergraduate. And fortunately, my college coach brought me into his office fall of my senior year, asked me what I wanted to do. I was playing baseball for him at the time. I told him I'd like to play professionally. After he chuckled for a little bit and told me that wasn't going to happen, he said, no, seriously, what do you want to do? And I thought at that time it was teaching and coaching. He asked me if I wanted him to make some calls for me. And in my time out of Amherst College, he's recommended 4 individuals to me in 20 years, Ben Cherington being one of them. And each one of those that he's recommended has gone on to be tremendously successful.
And Ben, most influential people in your career?
Yeah, Neal and I share one in common. That's Dan Duquette, who hired me. My first full-time job was in Boston after I left Cleveland. And he was influential in the sense that he gave me an opportunity to really learn a lot before I probably was ready to do it. He let me get involved in scouting at a level that, frankly, I probably wasn't prepared for. Sent me down to Latin America to learn the ropes down there, and I made some mistakes and had some successes, but learned a lot from it. And so I'm always grateful to him for giving me that opportunity. And then when the Red Sox were sold in 2001, 2002, I hid in the closet for a few months and came out and still had a job. And not too long after that, Theo Epstein was named GM, and he gave me lots of opportunity, not just in title or in job description, but just an opportunity to learn so many things about the game, get involved in so many areas, be involved in so many things. So he was absolutely a big influence on me.
Chris?
Not to be redundant, but there are a lot of similar themes in the people that were influential. For me, obviously, I mentioned Neal already, not only for providing that first opportunity, but the guidance and he provided along the way. And also, I actually turned out, not only did Neal give me my first opportunity with the Expos, but also when there was an opening in Cleveland, he also was an advocate for me going over to the Cleveland environment. And I think as Ben and Neal have already alluded to, it's a really special place to work, and there's a special group of people there led at that time by John Hart and Mark Shapiro, who's currently there as a president. Both guys were exceptionally influential and still are to this day for me in my career. And Mark is an unbelievable leader who, as Neal and Ben have already alluded to, someone who provides and empowers the people that work with him, and provided a tremendous opportunity to grow and develop along the way. And as Ben said, probably gave me some responsibilities maybe a little bit before I was ready for them. But he's always someone that's believed in me and gave me that opportunity. And as Ben has touched upon earlier, that environment in which you work is so important, and is one of the reasons I think I cherish the environment I currently work in today, and I know Ben and Neal feel similarly about their situations.
Ben, I'm going to start with you on this, because before we came up here, Chris and Neal were telling me maybe I should ask Ben some more questions because we were going to do this by percentage of payroll, but I decided to go against the script here. Ben, how did your time at UMass in the sport management program prepare you for this job right now?
I think more than anything, there are definitely elements of the classwork that were really helpful, labor relations work, and I remember a lot of stuff we did with Todd Crossett that I still think about and use. So there's a lot of stuff that I remember that was really useful. But if I had to take one thing, it would be, two things I would say. First is just the standard that was set, and the standard by which you're always looking to find a way to do something better, finding a better way to do something, and then implementing that into a practice, whether it's something we were doing here on campus, and then ultimately, eventually, in my jobs in baseball. But I think also maybe a little less tangible, I suppose, was, in that environment at the time, Chris was in it too, it was a relatively small group of people, classmates, peers, and relatively small faculty. And it was such a was such a healthy sort of conversational dynamic within that group, arguing with each other. You could argue with a faculty member as well as you could, someone sitting next to you in the classroom. So there's this healthy dialogue and discourse constantly, and it taught you to make an argument. It also taught you to develop relationships with people that came from different backgrounds and didn't look the same, didn't believe in the same things necessarily that I did. And that's more than anything what you have to do in this job is you have to develop relationships with all sorts of people, have conversations with all sorts of people, disagree sometimes, in order to get to a decision, an end result that's positive for the organization.
Neal, any thoughts on how your time here at UMass prepared you for this job?
When you follow Ben, sometimes he takes all the good information from you. So I would echo that. Again, Lisa's labor relations class, we were, I guess, I don't know if fortunate's the right word, but one of the many NHL work stoppages was going on as we were going through the class. So we actually got to negotiate our own version of the NHL labor agreement. And you learn very quickly that you have to compromise. You learn very quickly that you're not always right. But you also learn very quickly you need to be able to trust the person opposite you. And if they violate that trust, you no longer trust them. But in Glenn's class, a sports law course, but it was as much the conversations, the ongoing conversations, the talent, the intelligence of the group. I'm very jealous of those of you that are sitting with, that'll have the dual degree when you're done. We didn't have that opportunity, formally anyway. I think that's a tremendous separator for you all as you go forward.
Chris?
Ditto.
I was ready.
No, I think that Ben and Neal covered a lot of things, but I think the environment here was so unique and the opportunity it provided all of us. And as Ben said, not only the faculty, but the peers and the environment that was created. So it was really a unique.
One of my favorite sayings is that adversity often introduces us to ourselves, because it's easy in the good times to get things going, but when we have tough times, how do we get through them? So Chris, I'll come back to you. What was the most challenging or difficult time in your career, and sort of how did you approach that and get through that?
Well, I think one of the most challenging things about our job, I think, is trying to find that appropriate balance between work and family and the rest of your life, because it's a constant challenge for us in our jobs. It's a 365-day-a-year job, 24 hours a day. The way the news cycle has changed to become a 24/7 news environment has really made our jobs demanding. So last January, I was actually sharing it with these guys backstage. My wife and I were getting ready to go on our first semi-vacation. It was a 4-day weekend. It's the first time we were going to get away without our children in 5 or 6 years. And literally the night before we were going to go away, I got a call saying that our player, who was known as Fausto Carmona at the time, was no longer Fausto Carmona. He was Roberto Hernandez. And so I had to, at that night, negotiate on a few levels. One, we had to work through a very complicated situation involving a player where there's no GM handbook out there, and if there was, that certainly wouldn't be in it, where a player not only changed his identity, but is in Dominican jail, and is 3 years older than he said, and oh, by the way, you were counting on him to pitch 200 innings for you that year. So that was challenging, but probably more challenging was explaining to my wife why the vacation that we had planned may be a little bit different than we initially expected. So thankfully, and I make light of it, but that balance, that work-life balance, is something that I continually try to strive for and try to figure out a way to navigate. And I'm very fortunate that I have a unbelievable wife who helps support what I do, because without her support and without the way she helps me, or without her perspective and the way she helps me keep things in balance, it would be really tough to do.
Chris, I'm glad you told the story, because there's some of my media friends here. Sometimes you guys make trades when we're trying to go on vacation. So if you could keep that in mind, we'd appreciate it too, right?
Can you tell us when they are so we'll make sure that's when we do it?
We're getting along great, I'm telling you. Ben, you want to take a crack at that one, just the most challenging, difficult time in your career, and how did you sort of get through that?
Still trying to get through it. We're Yeah, we had a tough year in Boston, and I think we really are still trying to get through it. But I think what you learn is that you have to fall back on the things that you can count on the most, and that includes family, and my wife's a big part of that. The people that you work with, that you trust, that have your back and are gonna show up every day and go to war and try to figure this out. And we're fortunate that our ownership group in Boston is fully committed. So when you have those things in place, you can try to sort of see through the fog and get to the things that will get us back on track as a team. In Boston, anybody that's I'm fortunate to be GM, but I understand the passion for the team that exists, and we all have that same passion. So hard to watch it when things aren't going well, and so we take it personally when things aren't going well, and take it and put it on ourselves to get it pointed back in the right direction. And we need to do that in a way that works over the long term, and that's the biggest challenge, is recognizing that, okay, what have we done wrong? How do we fix it, and how do we fix it where it doesn't just feel good in December and January, but works over a sustained period of time.
Neal, the toughest part of your career, and how did you get through it?
The challenge is to steal a line from a colleague, to go back to Chris's point about balance. In baseball, there's either great wives or ex-wives. And I'm fortunate right now that I still have a great wife, and I think she still thinks I'm kind of good as her husband. But there are days I make her wonder, I'm sure. With respect to the challenges within the industry, we live in a very results-oriented industry. You win and you lose, and it's simple. If you lose, you're incompetent. If you win, you're a little bit less incompetent in some people's minds. And that's a struggle, because the challenge is we're trying to keep our players, we're trying to keep our staff, we're trying to keep ourselves focused on the process. Because the reality of our environment is step one leads to step two leads to step three. So if we focus on our process and we take care of each individual in our organization, they take care of their process, the outcome at the end is going to be a better major league team. We're going to play better baseball, and we're going to get the outcome that we desire. Obviously, we did that for 4 months, and then for 2 months we stopped doing that. And we became very focused on the win and the loss. And we're a young team. We've got to mature beyond that. We're a young staff. We've got to mature beyond that. But we've got to get back to doing what allowed us to be successful. Trust in that, as Ben talked about. We work with a great group of people. Trust those people, empower those people, direct those people, guide those people, and believe that if we take care of our process, the results will take care of themselves.
You guys obviously have a connection that goes way back. I mean, can you at all rely on each other, even though you're with different teams? And in a lot of ways, you're competing against each other, Chris. I mean, Neal sort of got you your start in a lot of ways. I mean, could you ever give him a call? And
We do it all the time. This year actually was not an easy year for any of us. And actually, I talked to Neal a number of times, especially in the second half, and reached out to Ben as he and I both were going through some challenges simultaneously, and not only to bend his ear, but also to get some advice, because these are the guys that are experiencing a lot of similar things, and people whose opinions and I trust and respect. So we talk quite often during the year, not only when things aren't going well, but when they're going well as well.
we've covered a lot of stuff career-wise. Just sort of one more question along those lines before we get to maybe some more specifics about what you guys do in the actual job of general manager. And Ben, I think you touched on this a little bit earlier. Do you recommend any specific path for anyone in the audience that would like to be a general manager? Because it seems like there maybe is no one set way to do it these days. You see general managers with varied backgrounds.
Yeah, I think more and more that the path to getting there can look very, very different. 30 teams, the paths look very different amongst those 30 teams. So again, I think more importantly, aside from getting around the right people, I think about the more the skills necessary and the qualities necessary. I think being able to engage in an intellectual conversation, being able to sort of tackle intellectual challenges, whether it's sort of trying to figure out what a player's value is or what the right contract is or you know, any sort of part of our job. You know, there are no easy solutions. Sometimes they look easy after a while, but they probably weren't easy getting there. So I think any sort of path that forces you to, you know, number one, puts you around good people that are going to challenge and inspire you, but also forces you to really think critically about issues, communicate with people, you know, develop relationships that are based on trust and integrity. I mean, I think that's one thing I know when I call Chris or Neal that we may disagree about something, but I know I trust them. I know I trust what they're telling me. And so, you know, at the end of the conversation, may not lead to a deal, but I know the information I'm getting is accurate and they're being honest. And so if the more relationships like that, whether it be with another GM or an agent or one of your owners or a player or whatever, the more relationships you have like that, I think the better chance you have to make successful decisions. So in order to develop those relationships, it does require, it requires that relationship building skill, and which involves, you know, being honest and having integrity and following through on what you're going to say, what you say you're going to do, and even if it puts you in a difficult spot in the short term, as often it does in these jobs, that if you truly are going to do what you say you're going to do, it's not always going to look rosy all the time, and you have to be willing to do that.
Neal or Chris, before I go ahead, did you want to add anything in terms of like the path for anyone that might be interested in going down this road?
Well, I think we've touched on it a little bit. The entry level is not going to be your ultimate job. The recognition of that, whatever you need to do to get your foot in the door. If you end up in an area that you don't really want to be, then go exceed expectations and exceed everyone's expectations, and put yourself in a position to be that next hire when that comes down the line. Find your passion. Are you passionate about baseball operations, event management, ballpark management, whatever your passion is? Find your passion, learn as much as you can about that. Specifically for us, there's different avenues. There's scouting, there's player development, there's baseball operations. Find what your strengths are and ideally match your strengths to which pathway you want to take. We've each taken different pathways. Ben's kind of everywhere. I think you've held almost every job in a baseball organization. I came more through player development. Chris came more through baseball operations, but we've all ended up at the same point.
Anything to add, Chris?
I think they covered it all. Follow your passion, surround yourself with good people, and then I think for me the other aspect of it, and they alluded to it, is just do the job that you have as well as you possibly can. Deliver exceptional results with great work product, quicker and better than the person giving it to you could expect. And if you do that, then other opportunities will open up for themselves.
Going to shift a little bit here and talk more specifically about the actual jobs that you do and some of what it entails. And I just sort of have to catch my breath here. I'm not used to actually talking with people and getting answers. You have to understand, I covered Bill Belichick. So usually at this point, I'm banging my head against the wall. So I think we're doing pretty well here. So I want to ask you, all three of you, if you can touch on this. And Neal, I'll start with you. What are the responsibilities and day-to-day things about your job that maybe some people in the general public might not be aware of?
Well, I think that's the beautiful part about the job is there is no day-to-day. Cyclical maybe, different parts of the year, getting ready for spring training. The early part of the season as you evaluate your club and what you might need, getting ready for the draft, the trade deadline. Catch your breath a little bit in August, and now you begin for postseason, whether you're in it, which is where we all want to be, or you're not in it. You begin your off-season planning. You put your plan in place, and then October, November, December, January, you're executing your plan. So the job is cyclical. I hope not to have a day like Chris had, where you get a phone call saying that one of your players is not going to make spring training. But you always have to be ready to react. You always have to be able to adjust and adapt on the fly. But that's one of the beautiful parts about the job is there is no such thing as a typical day. There's no such thing as a typical year. As soon as you think this game, you've got some things figured out, this game kicks you right in the teeth and reminds you that it's bigger than you are, it's better than you are, and you better keep working at it.
Ben, the responsibilities of the job that maybe some people might not be aware of.
I don't think I can add much to that other than, you know, the attention, most of the attention on the things that things that we do that get the most attention, I should say, are, major league player transactions, and obviously so. And that is an important part of the job, clearly. We're putting together a team to win at the major league level. Some of the actually more enjoyable parts of the job have nothing to do with that. It's, finding the right guy to go scout in the Southeast. It's, finding the right, a minor league free agent who no one has ever heard of that ends up helping your team in some way. It's finding, a better way to structure our medical staff, program. The things that are not quite as visible that we know in the long run make an impact. We spend, a lot of time on those parts of the job, just as much time on those parts of the job as we do on trying to make trades or sign free agents. Maybe not today, I don't, but in most parts of the year we do.
Chris, I'll add another layer to it because you're sort of, I'm going to get you in the tough spot, sort of going third in the batting order after the two guys. Who are the main people you're communicating with on a day-to-day basis in terms of, and what skills have you developed that sort of have allowed you to be a successful communicator among your staff?
Well, I think as Neal and Ben both alluded to, the cyclical nature of our job really causes us to focus our attention in different places throughout the course of the year. So the frequency and intensity of the conversations may vary, the individual may vary depending upon the time of the year. During the season, there's a lot of communication, obviously, with the major league staff, our major league manager, our player development people, what's going on in the minor leagues. As we approach the draft, a lot of discussions with our scouting directors and our senior scouts. And then, as we, evolve to or move towards some of the player personnel focused times of the year, whether it's a trade deadline or the off season, we're talking to maybe some of our more experienced and senior evaluators. So that, can really vary throughout the course of the year, but then, the group of people that you surround yourself with in the front office is certainly a big part of that. And I think that's one of the important things in terms of skills, is just to be able to understand as an individual, as a leader, what your relative strengths are, and to make sure that you surround yourself with a group of people that complement you and bring different skills and strengths to the table, and make sure you look, and Ben alluded to this earlier, look at every issue from a variety of angles and make sure you're looking at it from a number of different perspectives, and that you have the right people providing the right input.
The students asked a lot of great questions that I was able to look at before we came up here, and one of the consistent themes that I saw was sort of balancing the sabermetrics versus maybe the old school, and I know this is a topic you've all addressed at some point. Where do we stand right now in terms of how you guys approach that? And Neal, maybe you lead us off and we'll go right down the line here.
I think the reality is the best in our industry have always used a balance. Branch Rickey talked about OPS without really talking about OPS in a long time ago, 60, 70 years ago. What's different nowadays is the quality of the metrics, the different elements that are measured, the depth to which they're measured. But the reality is we all balance it. We balance the subjective, which is our scouts out in the field, with the objective, which is what our analysts tell us. There's a pendulum that swings based upon the impact of the decision, the importance of the decision. When you're about to make an organizationally altering decision, you want them to be aligned as closely as possible. If you're picking up a waiver claim or signing one of those minor league free agents and one side's really strong and the other side's against it, that's okay at that point in time. The quality of the information, how strong is the metric, how quality is the data, how much do you trust that scout? Is he one of your veteran scouts that's been out there forever, that's got a database of players in his mind, of thousands of players, and he's got conviction? Or is it trying to determine whether a high school hitter's .675 batting average is relevant? By the way, it's not. So there's a balance there between the two, and I think in my mind anyway, a lot more has been made of a separation between the two. When I believe, and we believe, the best always utilize both sides. It's just a matter of how often, how frequent, and to what balance.
Ben?
Yeah, completely agree with that. We strive to find a way to balance both perspectives in the best way possible, and find the best people with backgrounds, in both of those areas. So, before we make a decision, I want to hear from an analyst, and I also want to hear from our best evaluators. And then, I think the challenge for all three of us, I think I could probably speak for all three of us, is sort of looking forward, figuring out, what is, how how to use sort of newer information in the best way possible and build metrics that are going to make an impact over the next 10 to 15 years. It took a long time for even, you know, something like on-base percentage to become accepted. It sort of got to the point where, okay, now nobody can argue that getting on base is a bad idea. So everyone wants to have guys that get on base, so that becomes accepted. But it took a long time to get there. It took a lot of study from people to say, this is what getting on base means in terms of translating into runs and blah, 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 blah. But it took a long time, and some of the newer information that we're gathering and people are doing really interesting things with has not been analyzed for as long a period of time. So there are measurements that we're using, and I know the Indians and Pirates are using in their own way, and are some even available publicly, that are still sort of in embryonic stage in a way. There's a long way to go with in terms of analysis of certain forms of data, and I think that's a challenge we'll all face moving forward.
I think that actually is one of the biggest challenges that we have, is that not that we don't have enough information, but in some cases we have too much. And to try to distill down what's relevant and what's meaningful in making a decision, I think that's actually the challenge. Because right now there is more information out there than we could possibly digest on a particular player or weighing particular trade or what's the right value for a free agent. And so our big challenge is, how do we distill that information down, and then how do we beat our competitors? Because that's ultimately what we're all trying to do. And Neal and I may have to do it a little bit differently than Ben, but we're still looking at a lot of the same information. So that's a challenge that we have, is to try to be one step ahead and try to find new and creative ways to do that.
Chris, one of the questions noted that the Moneyball, the book, the movie, sort of has created a group of people that want to be general managers, maybe even more so than before. I don't know if you've read the book, saw the movie, your thoughts on that, and maybe if there's any misconceptions, from the way you saw the movie, read the book, to the way it's applied.
I think there are a few things about both the book and the movie that may not be exactly illustrate perfectly what baseball or working in a front office might be like, but I actually think that the impact that Moneyball's had on at least our job has been great, because it's opened and made a lot of exceptionally bright, intelligent people with unbelievably diverse backgrounds interested in baseball. And so as we look to hire the next generation of baseball executives, there's an unbelievable pool of people to select from. And so I know our goal is always to try to hire people that are smarter or better at something than we are. And I think the book has just opened up that opportunity and has encouraged more people to get involved in the game.
So Neal and Ben, either one of you can take this one. We've talked about sort of some of the sabermetrics and the Moneyball, but how about just the idea of personality? When you're putting a team together and you have a player who's a strong personality, either on the team or in your front office, how do you view sort of integrating that strong personality into your team?
Boy, I wish I know it's important, but I don't know exactly how to do it yet. It's at least as far as players are concerned, we know that there are certain personality traits or attributes that would be helpful in a place like Boston. We do our best to identify those and find those qualities in the players that we're going after, whether it be in trade or free agency. But it is difficult to predict until they're in that environment exactly how they're going to respond to the environment, because so much of it is contextual. Even if one player, the same player, if he comes to Boston and gets off to a bad start as opposed to a good start, might really react differently to that environment. It might change the course of their time in Boston in a dramatic way, and we've seen that. So we know it's important, but we're still trying to figure out exactly how to identify the qualities, and then more than anything, build protection for the player once they're in a place like Boston, and allow that personality to come out. We've seen players come to Boston and they're just, by force of nature, Kevin Millar or something like that, their personalities are so large that they sort of gravitate, and it's almost like they're born again coming to Boston, because the city fits the person, and it's just a magic combination. There are other guys who are really good people, care, like playing the game, hard workers, good teammates, a lot of the things that we'd normally be looking for that have struggled more in the environment. So it's definitely a thing we're still working on and thinking about, but recognize its importance. And ultimately, what we want is that, you know, when it's 7 o'clock that night when the game starts, all energy and focus being on playing the game, and the focus from really actually 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 o'clock being there too. So the more people you have in that environment, players, coaches, staff, trainers, everybody in that sort of mix that can handle that environment and get their work done accordingly, you know, that's the mix you're looking for, and figuring out the exact sort of recipe items that go into that continues to be a challenge. But as far as off the field, you know, it's a as these guys have referenced, it's a grind off the field as well as it is on the field, getting through a season. And you have, even in a good year, you have low moments. In a bad year, you have lots of low moments. And so you really rely on the people around you. And so you know, I want people in our office who are tough enough to get through those low moments, also tough enough to show up the next day and, you know, still have fun and, you know, pop the balloon and you know, not allow, you know, avoid allowing a tough time to turn into a diminished work product. Because, you know, obviously when things aren't going well, in order to have a good work product, in order to still get your job done, you got to show up to work the next day in a good frame of mind. So I want people around me that are like that.
Neal, Ben touched on the environment. Obviously, every environment's different, but I think part of what we're all dealing with, whether it's in your role or even as a media member, is the 24/7 news cycle, the Twitter, and it's like, you know, all over the place now. How has that made your job more challenging, or even, you know, possibly helped you in your job?
The reality is we're never off the clock. The athletes are never off the clock, and that makes it more challenging without a question. I'm trying to think of how it's helped, and I'm scuffling with that a little bit. No offense intended, Mike. We're trying to build cohesive teams, and in baseball of all sports, it's probably the most challenging because baseball is a game of individual battles. But the most cohesive teams are the ones that win, and the ones that win are the most cohesive teams. So we're trying to build cohesiveness because we haven't figured out the winning part just yet. So we're working to have one lead to the other. Sometimes the media can, in some ways, make that more challenging. In other ways, make it less challenging because guys will unite around each other if somebody goes through a tough time. It's a part of our industry. It's a part of all sports industries. It's changing. It's evolving, and we've got to find a better way to help our players understand it, acknowledge it, and thrive if that's possible.
Chris, how much is that whole 24/7 the media aspect something that you are dealing with, maybe more so now than you were before?
It's certainly evolved over time. I think, you know, in our roles, trying to navigate it, we have a responsibility, and that's part of what makes our job so great is that people care about what we do and they care about the teams. So we have a responsibility to try to communicate it. Now, it's also, you know, you have to be mindful of fairness and how you're giving information and that you're consistent with it, and also try to realize that for us to have news to report over that time, we need to do something else aside from just reply to media requests all the time. And so it's just finding the right balance and, you know, making sure you try to treat everyone fair and respectfully.
How much does just the constant scrutiny or pressure affect you on a day-to-day basis from that 24/7 news cycle? It seems like, you know, every decision is sort of looked at maybe closer than it ever was before.
I mean, you try not to let it affect you, and I think the most important thing to allow that to happen is, one, have the right perspective on it and realize this is what we do. It doesn't define who we are. But I think Ben alluded to it earlier, is you need to have the right group of people around you. You need to go to work every day and have the right people that you're interacting, whether it's in your front office, your group of scouts, your player development people, that understand the vision, understand that we're all working trying to achieve a result, and that there are going to be bad days and bad years, and you have to, you know, believe in what you're doing and still have that energy, as Ben said, to come to work the next day with determined, even more determined to do the job the best you can. And I think that's a big part of it. And then obviously the having that right balance and right perspective and family. And we're each fortunate to have very supportive wives that that are there to help us work through things and help us provide that perspective for those moments when we lose it.
We have some people in the audience who might be interested in becoming sports agents, and so we know you deal with them. I'm not sure who's worse, the agents or the media, but we can talk about that later. What advice would you give to the people who want to be sports agents in terms of taking that route and sort of your interactions with them?
Well, I don't have any advice as far as how to crack the door open, because honestly, if I think back to getting started in baseball, and if as hard as it was to get into a front office, I personally can't imagine starting a sports agency on your own right now. So I think there's the more sort of common path is to go to work for a bigger firm, and then maybe you bounce off on your own after you build up a client base. But it's a tough business to get into. I think I think the relationships I've tried to build with agents are really just based on trying to you have to protect your own interests. You have to protect the team. You're trying to do something for the Red Sox, but once you have a player in your organization, there's a common goal. When you're negotiating over a player, you may have a disagreement as to what's right and what's wrong and what's fair and what's not, and you're just trying to get a deal done. But once the player is in the organization, you really want the same thing. The best outcome for everyone is for the player to succeed. That helps the team. It helps him eventually earn more money, and it helps the agent get a bigger commission. So we're all sort of aligned to that. And I've found that, in my feeling is that the best agents are ones that really grasp that. And once the player's in the organization, they're as committed as you are to making sure the player does what he needs to do off the field, on the field, to get the most out of him.
Neal, how would you sort of sum up the dealings with agents, how that works from your perspective?
I think the reality is it's just about the same as dealing with people in your normal life. You've got people that you've earned their trust and respect, they've earned your trust and respect, and the dealings are pretty straightforward and pretty open. And you recognize that there is a mutual benefit being sought. And then you have others that it's not that way at all. It is about something that's different than your goal. And Ben hit it perfectly. The best agents that I've dealt with understand that all but about 2 or 3 days a year, once they're in your system, you guys are partners, and you're working together. The worst agents work to drive a wedge to create distrust between the player and the organization, and to create trust between the agent and the player, when the reality is we all are working toward the same thing. The best outcome for us all is for that player to achieve his potential. And the same characteristics that are going to make you successful in life can and should make you successful as an agent. Like Ben, I have no idea how to get in. It's got to be incredibly challenging to find your way in. I would think it's probably similar to a front office job, intern. Get your foot in the door, exceed expectations, do it better, quicker, faster, better, quicker, and than anyone anticipated, and just keep working your way up through. But recognize that there is somebody on the other end of that phone that has a job to do, and what is their motivation, and how do you reach a common goal if you can?
Given the dynamics in play of putting a team together and hiring the right manager to lead that team, what are some of the characteristics that you would all look for in a manager to lead the team?
Well, as you know, I think I referenced earlier, what you want to feel as a general manager, what I want to feel during the season at 7 o'clock is that when the game starts, all energy has been put into preparing for that game, as much as possible anyway, and that the players are being put in the best possible position to succeed. So the manager can't do that alone, but the manager has a big responsibility toward that, in the sense of, number one, he's got to help us. Hire a really good coaching staff with expertise in different areas, so that we're teaching all the time. That's a big part of the manager's responsibility. And then he's got to manage that coaching staff to make sure that they're doing that. he's got to develop relationships with players and create an environment where there's trust and accountability. And if things aren't being done, whether it's a player or a coach or someone in the clubhouse staff, that's confronted head on and dealt with, and that there are ramifications if that doesn't improve, the performance doesn't improve. And so it's, I think, managing in the big leagues, a lot of focus is put on the sort of tactical decisions from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and no doubt those can be important over the course of a season. There are times when a manager can make a decision to help you win a game. There's no doubt about it, or lose a game. But I think the bigger part of the job comes before 7 o'clock, and I want the manager to play a big role in, at 7 o'clock, everyone should be prepared and focused on, and in the best possible position to go perform and win a game.
Neal or Chris, anything to add there? Or you can jump ahead and we can talk about technology, which was something I wanted to ask you as well, and just how some advancements in technology have maybe changed your job from when you first got into it.
Well, as we talked a little bit about it earlier, I think with the evolution of the new data sources that are out there and technology, how we look at players is far differently than maybe we did 10, 15 years, 20 years ago. I think some of the general parameters are the same. You're still trying to assess the same skills, the same abilities, and try to ultimately do what's nearly impossible, which is predict future human performance. But there are so many more tools at our disposal now that weren't there 10 or 15 years ago. Tools like PitchFX, which allows, through a series of cameras, allows you to triangulate not only the velocity of the ball, but how it spins and how it breaks, horizontal, vertical movement, which allows you a different level of precision than was available 10, 15 years ago. So there are continually new sources of data, and I think our biggest challenge is how to stay ahead of it, how to anticipate it, and then once it's available, how do we dissect it and really factor that in to our decision-making process and ultimately determine what's relevant?
Neal, just looking at baseball as a whole, sort of graduating to our final sort of topic here, we touched on a lot of career stuff and a lot of stuff specific to the job that you guys do. How about the game on the whole? What do you see over the next decade as maybe the biggest change that we might see in the game of baseball?
Boy, that's a great question, because there's so many fronts from which you can attack it. Technology, the ability to quantify the intangibles, and the ability to consistently develop the intangibles. That might be the next Moneyball. It might be, or it could be, the ability to keep your players on the field longer. Not only treating injuries, but hopefully preventing injuries and or maximizing the physical performance in what is a very different environment than it was 10 years ago. The international game is going to continue to be important. The evolution of the college game, going back to the more realistic in terms of wood versus the old aluminum bats. Where do we head with pitcher development? There tends to be a movement back towards kind of the free rein, and yet then you read an article that talks about what pitchers used to get through 8 innings in terms of pitch counts are now getting through 6 innings. So the pitch count really hasn't changed. It's just our ability to get through. So every time we open a new door, there's another series of questions that gets raised because of that. Our game is great. It's you start looking at the parity within the game, the number of teams that have had opportunities. Chris and I and Ben joke all the time about payroll disparity. At the same time, we've been able to compete, or most small markets have been able to compete here in recent years, and we have hope in Pittsburgh. Is the system perfect? No, the system's not perfect, but it's working better than it worked 15 to 20 years ago. And where do the powers that be, the people that are a lot more intelligent than we are and lead our game, where do they help us go? Where do they take us? And more importantly, how can we impact it, and how do we continue to put a better product on the field year in and year out?
So this is a specific question. Again, looking to the future, what do you think the future of the international talent market is in baseball?
Well, think it'll be very strong, and teams will continue to seek talent all over the world. There are countries that have been playing baseball for a long time. I don't see any reason to think that they're going to stop playing. Those countries in which baseball is part of the culture, there's no signs of that slowing, and there's opportunity for the best players from those countries. So there's going to be incentive to keep playing as the game evolves or builds in sort of newer markets, newer countries that maybe didn't traditionally play baseball. I think that'll be interesting to see if the game really catches a hold in a place to the point where teams can justify more of an investment in a new country or a new market. We'll see how that evolves. Teams have started to put their toe in the water in some new places. But I would, that's sort of on the player personnel side. In terms of the marketing of the game and the spread of the game, I know that's a central issue for the commissioner's office, and there's a lot of activity towards that.
And this is sort of a general question. Obviously, you're all passionate about the game. What would be your level of concern, if any, over the aging demographic of the game's fans, sort of capturing the younger fans?
I think it's an important issue. It's one I know that the commissioner and people in the central office are certainly very concerned about, because it's baseball is an unbelievable game that we all share such a strong passion for. But the people that tend to gravitate towards it are people that have had that tradition and have been following baseball for decades. And I think in today's world, whether it's a 24/7 cycle or the other alternatives that are out there, basketball, X Games, football, other sports, a lot of young people seem to be gravitating towards those other sports, not only in terms of what they're watching, but who's participating. So I think it's essential for us as a game not only to continue to try to find new ways to attract viewers, but to continue to make sure we're developing it on a grassroots level.
Anything to add there, Neal or Ben?
Yeah, I would hope that one of the roles that new technology can play would be to capture the interest of a sort of different part of the fan bases, particularly younger people. There are things that new technology can sort of bring out of the game that weren't there before. Ways that a person can look at the game through pitch tracking, technology and human tracking technology, and these things that are coming down the pike that are different. And my hope with that's another sort of avenue into the game for a young person to get interested.
I asked one of the student leaders here, what would make this a successful night? And the answer was that if everyone in the audience could leave here maybe with one thing that they could take to apply to their own career from this evening. So I think I'll wrap it with this. I'll just go right down the line. If you can maybe pass along anything that you would tell the students, if you could take one thing from this evening to apply to your own career, what would it be?
Well, we've talked about a lot of things. I think just the two things that resonate with me are follow your passion and work exceptionally hard. I think that if you do those two things, it often leads to really good results and sets you up for success.
Yeah, I mean, the three of us are lucky to have these jobs, but I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room that have no interest in being a baseball GM and have aspirations to do something else. I think whatever path you want to go down, to get to a position where you're fulfilled and making decisions and in a leadership role, requires what Chris said. And with passion comes a lot of fun too. So you'll end up having a lot more fun if you're doing something that you have passion for, and with good people.
I think the simplest thing, and I've said it a few times here tonight, is exceed expectations. Everything you go into, there's a set of expectations. Every time you're handed a role, every time you're handed a responsibility, and if you exceed those expectations by doing it better than they expected, quicker than they expected, chances are pretty good the next opportunity is going to be a little bit bigger, and the next opportunity, and speaking from experience, the two guys to my right exceeded expectations in everything they did while they were with the organizations I was fortunate enough to be with, and they're great role models for those that have done that. They not only have the prerequisites of character, integrity, intelligence, passion, hard working, but they took tremendous pride in what they did. They were also very humble, wanted to learn. They had patience, recognized that we all want to get to the highest level as quickly as we can, but there are dues to be paid, and as I get older, I've come to value experience a little bit more than I used to maybe when I was younger. But I think if you just go into everything that you tackle with the idea that you're going to exceed the expectation of the person that gave you that opportunity, I think you're going to come away pretty strong.
It's great stuff and great advice all around. What we'd like to do right now is call up two student leaders, Wes LaValle and Scott Savrin, to promote some to give some thank you notes and a special presentation.
Thank you, Ben, Chris, Neal, and Mike. I'm sure each of you picked up more fans, more support for your teams tonight. By having the three of you here tonight, we have all just made and witnessed history. And to think, this was student-inspired and student-driven. Hello, I'm Scott Savrin, Vice President of the Jewish Leaders in Business. I want to thank the Mark H. McCormack School of Sport Management at the Isenberg School of Management at the University of Massachusetts Amherst for their support and help throughout this entire process. Specifically, I'd like to thank Professor Lisa Master-Alexis and Alumni Relations Coordinator Janice Ori. Jan, are you here? No? Oh, okay. Well, thank you to Jan. And I also need to thank, of course, our alumni advisor, Scott Nielsen. Without Scott Nielsen, his mentoring, his passion, and his excellence-only attitude inspired us every step of the way throughout this journey. And then comes Wes, my right-hand man throughout this entire process, who worked with me tirelessly and the entire student committee. I also need to thank Kevin Lombard and Jess Dunn and the entire student team made up of 18 students who, can you please all stand up? I was supposed to have a slide real quick, but all your help, you 18 students who are in the committee, please stand up, because you guys, this was all you. This entire group of individuals, faculty, staff, students, this partnership was one of the best learning and professional development experiences we have all experienced as a school as a whole and as students individually. It has been inspiring to listen to these three men talk tonight, sharing the challenges they have faced and the successes they have achieved, so we students can better understand how to grow our careers. It is our hope that sometime in the near future, Wes, myself, and all the other students involved are up here on a panel like this, giving back to our students in the audience. We want to show our appreciation to our alumni today and make sure they want to come back again. To do this, we honor them with their own personalized UMass baseball jerseys. Wes, or Seth, can you bring them out? Awesome. Thank you, guys. So if you would all stand up, we'll do a nice little...